Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second day of our APYD conference. We're glad to have you. My name is Catherine Page, and I'm the lucky intern for the day, and I get to lead our discussion this morning. I have with me today Thanara Bailey, our CEO and president of the Siskey Group. Good morning and afternoon and evening, because this is what we talked about yesterday. The beauty of the internet and the live webinars is that we're chatting with people all over the world in all different time zones. So we get to greet good morning, afternoon, good evening. Good morning, afternoon, good evening to all of my fellow interns that are joining us today. And I just wanted to have you all briefly introduce yourself. I'm calling in today from Madison, Wisconsin, my hometown. I'm visiting for the summer, and I'm in my second semester with the Siskey Group. And my concentration is on homelessness and domestic violence and transitional housing. Alexis, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Alexis Higa. I am calling in from Sacramento, California. So it is morning for me, so I'm a good morning person. Currently, my concentration is COPA, so Community Organization Planning Administration. But my field that I would like to study is transient youth, so I'm hoping to get more information regarding that through this internship. I am a first semester intern here, so I'm still learning the ins and outs and all the fun technology. And that's about it. So good morning, everybody.
Thank you. Good to have you. Heather?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Heather Mercer, and I'm calling in from Spokane, Washington, so it's also morning for me. And my concentration with the Siskey Group is focusing on women with a prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome. And I'm in my third semester with the Siskey Group. And yeah, it's been a blast and super excited to be here and participating in this conference that we've been planning for so long. So.
Thanks, Heather. It's been great working with you. Heather is our senior person. She'll be graduating. We're going to miss her, and she's been very instrumental in the conferences. And next to one of our newer interns, Jess.
Hello, good morning. My name is Jess. I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am in my 6th semester of 7 in the MSW program, and this is my kind of second semester with Siskey. I'm usually focusing on thinking about trauma care and tiny houses as alternative housing. So happy to be here today.
Great. Thanks for everyone for joining us. It's great to have you. I'm excited for our talk this morning. A couple announcements to get out of the way. We want to make sure and remind you all to visit our virtual exhibit hall, and today's a great day to do that because we have had a little bit of a change in our schedule. Our presentation, our workshop on Black Lives Matter movement has been moved to August the 8th. So we'll let you know more details as soon as we have them as to the time for that. Our workshop this afternoon on engagement is the key to connection with Seth Kelly will still be going on at 3 Eastern time, so we hope that you'll be joining us for that. And with that as kind of our background, Seth's talk today, our question of the day is, what challenges has your organization faced in engaging youth in your community? So we thought that would be a good start today to get us all talking about the challenges that we face, because we do face challenges. It's not an easy job working with youth. It's an inspiring job and a wonderful job, but it can be very challenging at times. And for most of us, it's a calling. So I don't even like to use the word job when I talk about working with youth, because I found all of my positions working with youth, I find it as a calling to be able to learn from kids, because we sometimes forget what it's like to be a kid. So that might kind of be my first takeaway for today with you guys. How hard do you think it is for us to engage with youth? How hard is it to remember what it was like being a kid? Anybody want to share any of that? Alexis?
I think this question actually inspires me a lot. It brings up past internships actually, and so I worked at a continuation high school, and I think one of the biggest barriers I had with this population was just getting the information to them. So one of the biggest things is they didn't know all of the services that they had access to, just because when you're in that age, you just don't know. You know, you don't know that if you're you're lacking a certain resource, and there are tons of things and agencies that provide these awesome things, but you don't have that middleman, or you don't have that actual gateway to get to that resource. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is just getting the information to youth and showing them that there are ways that we as adults help them or try to help them. So I think that's one of the biggest things that are lacking. And then also in regards to the question is, it's kind of like you said, some people forget how it is to be a kid. And I know I'm younger, so I mean, that was just, I can just look back and I can kind of see it. But I think one of the biggest issues regarding that is because it kind of puts you in a vulnerable spot, because everyone has a story and everyone went through some kind of challenge during that time period. And I think it puts someone in a vulnerable spot to remember those experiences, and then sometimes it's an uncomfortable topic to put yourself back in the shoes of how you were, because everyone wants to move forward, and it's kind of hard to put yourself back in a spot to actually connect with the youth, to be able to show empathy and show, I experienced this with you. And again, kids, they're like, no, you weren't, you never were young. So it's kind of like a misdial on both ends, which I think that's what I love so much about this question. It makes you think so out of the box.
Thank you, Alexis. That was just a wonderful discussion. And you said a couple of things that resonate with me. You talked about that middleman for youth and not always knowing where to go for the answers. And that reminded me of something a really good friend of mine mentioned to me. She used to be a social worker at a high school, and she was a high school guidance counselor. And she was always so frustrated because she would finally get someone in her office, and she'd be like, she said it'd be crickets in there for days, and she'd be wondering, why aren't kids coming to see me? They know I'm their social worker. They know I'm their guidance counselor. I know they're not doing that great, especially the freshmen, first week of school. And she would literally figured out, I have to go out and find them, because kids were very anxious about coming to her, and she found that what they were saying is, well, we don't think you would understand. How would you know what it feels like to be a freshman? You work in the school, you have lots of friends here. And I thought that was a really great point that you made, and it reminded me of my friend and all of her years with the frustrations. But she actually started going out and walking through the halls and saying, hi, I'm Sherry, I'm the guidance counselor, and it made a big difference for her. And I loved her stories. She was a fabulous guidance counselor, and spent many years in the high schools helping lots of teenagers who still keep in touch with her. And that's how I think that you've made a difference, that you've connected, is that kids will keep in touch with you through the years. The other thing you said that was really, I thought, interesting was your second point. You were talking about how do you remember what it's like to be a kid. And kids might say to you, well, you can't remember. And I get it. You're younger than me, so it's easier, a little bit easier for you. But still, you're an adult now, and that empathy component is huge. Being able to reach out to kids and let them know that you do know how they feel. However you can convey that to them. Maybe you can tell a story. Hey, when I was in the 4th grade, I got called redhead freckle face every day for a year. Maybe, and they'll go, you did? Well, so sometimes if you can just tell a story about your own experience, that's a true story, by the way. It does take me back to 4th grade. So thank you. Those were excellent, excellent points. Anybody else want to share something? Heather, I know you have a story.
Sure. Although Thanera had her hand up before I did.
Oh,
so
I didn't see it. Oh, Thanera, please go first, because I know you have stories. Either one of you. We want to hear from both of you.
Heather can go ahead. I'll just build on her because I'm chatty.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I really thank you, Alexis, for sharing all that, and also Kath for sharing as well. When I think about the challenges in engaging youth in the community, I think two things kind of bubbled up for me. The first is that, especially with the election happening right now, there's all these barriers in our society that are like, oh, you can't vote until you're 18. So does that mean that if before 18 that you don't have a voice, like that you don't have, and so I think sometimes that can discourage youth, saying, well, I can't vote, so I'm not going to participate in things that are going to affect their future, right? So I think it's really important to kind of help youth understand that even though there might be these
She froze for all of you?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have to wait for
Hopefully.
her to dial back in.
Hopefully she'll come back. I always get a little bit scared if it's me because, yesterday, sorry
Yeah.
everyone, I froze and ended the hangout. So, well, while we're waiting for Heather to come back, I'll continue with what I was planning to say as well. Thank you both for your points. And your point, Alexis, about remembering when you're a teenager, I think is one of the challenges that people face, and also allowing them to make their mistakes. Like, I think as adults, we can remember how hard it was to be bullied, to the mistakes that we made, the relationships or the individuals we interacted with, or if we were just stronger. I said this yesterday, kind of, that point of, when you go to school, you can remember that, like, all those people who seem so important and so cool in high school, they really don't matter to you today, when you're way past that. But when you're 15, when you're 16, it's your world. And so allowing them to feel bad, feel sad in the reality of, like, where they're living and what they're going through. And then also allowing them to come to you and be really open about some of the riskier things that they want to do. I think that's one of the challenges. I do not believe abstinence education works at all. And part of that is because you close the conversation on reality. Like, kids are going to experiment, they're going to interact, they're having relationships, and if you don't have a true conversation about how they're feeling, what they think about this person, how they want to explore that, and you make it that, nope, just don't do it, and that's the end of the conversation, and you're not open for them to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, even though in your head as the adult you're thinking, don't make that mistake, run, don't, that's a horrible person for you, or that's a horrible situation, or that's a mistake. Allowing them to have that opportunity, and to also be kids. I saw a video this morning of Malia Obama dancing at Lollapalooza, and she's getting quite a bit of flack about it. And I remember dancing like that at 18. We're young. We're living. We're enjoying the music. We're maybe not jamming the same way I would today, but allowing kids to really be kids and to enjoy their youth. And not everything is a world crisis. Yes, maybe that's not the most professional way to act, but when you were young, you do silly things, you live and you enjoy it. And as adults, I think allowing them to be kids, allowing them to make some mistakes and to recognize and learn from that, but to also try to be that listening ear, try to be open to the conversation about, some of the things that might be a little bit more risky, and helping them determine them for themselves that that's wrong or that's not what they should pursue, rather than kind of stopping the conversation cold and not letting them engage around that.
Thank you, Thanera. I love it when you give us your feedback, because it's just always so deep, so broad. You've had so many experiences, and we just appreciate your wealth of knowledge that you share with us. And I can't agree with you more about.
It could be broader. It could just be that I talk a lot.
Well, I love what you said about letting kids be kids, because I think sometimes that's one of the biggest challenges, and I'm wondering if you guys will all agree with me on this, and feel free to chime in, but kids don't feel like we let them be kids. I think they feel like we have these strict rules in everything they do, in every aspect of their life. What time they get up? Did you brush your teeth? Did you eat your breakfast? Have you had your vitamin C? Is your homework done? It gets to be, I think my son put it to me once, Mom, you ask me a million questions a day. I think I remember that back from when he was a kid, and I probably did when I think back now, but as a parent and as a person who works with youth, we're a work in progress too. And that's what I used to try to remind my kids. Hey, I didn't write the book on how to be a mommy, and I know none of us, there's lots of books written on how to work with youth, but it doesn't mean that they're all going to work for you at that given moment, because every child is different and unique, and that's what we have to remind them, is to be unique and to encourage more uniqueness, because I love it when people are unique. And I think so many kids feel like they have to fall into line and be like the other kids, and then when they're not, that's when you see teenage depression. That's when you see teenage suicide, because many kids feel like they don't fit in. They're not, because they're unique, they don't feel like they're special, which is the total opposite. How do you guys feel about that? Jess, I know you have something exciting to tell us.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thanks. Okay, I think that what you're saying and what Thanera was saying about kind of letting openness happen, kind of to fuel creativity and help kids, like help be a guide to get people to get to the topics that they're most interested in. Because I think youth are still in that there's so much out there, everything's out there. We maybe can't do anything, and help guiding them to what really fuels them and passions them is really the best way to engage them in pushing forward for themselves.
Great. That was awesome. I loved what you said, Jess, about engaging and pushing forward. Those are all really good words. And this kind of leads me to my next thought about what we could talk about is, so how do we, if you're working with youth and if you're in that kind of career position with working with youth, and there's so many different avenues. We talked about that in our Twitter chat on July 19th with our hashtag also social work, how many jobs there are that have to do with working with youth. It's kind of endless, and you could think about how do I get them to understand that I do want to be empathetic? Like how do I get them to, how do I bridge that? You know, how do I cross that road with them and have them meet me in the middle? Because I think they hear us, but do they really? They're listening, but do they hear us? I guess that's the way I want to say it. Because I know myself when I work with youth, I always say, hey, I'm willing to hear you. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to get down on your level. Help me understand. And what do you think is the best way to approach that with youth that you're working with? Danera?
So I think one of the challenges, and I think this is true with any role where you have some authority or some privilege or power, you're a little untrusting that someone really has your back. You know, if you have a new supervisor, they're like, oh yeah, open door policy, but you also don't want to overstep or seem incompetent. And I think for young people, when caring adults say, oh, I'm here for you, I'm listening, but are you gonna turn on me? Are you really listening? Are you really going to be there? And so I think some of it is also like being okay that it's going to take a while to build their trust and to continue to prove yourself, continue to show that, hey, when I say I'm going to show up, I show up. When you have something to talk about, as silly or as unimportant as it may seem to you, I'm really listening. I'm really asking questions. I'm not just doing the Christian mentioned this yesterday in the training, the like, yeah, when they're talking, you really say, so, you know, well, what did you say when you said that? You know, like you're bringing up and making them and their stories and their life feel important to you. And so that it's reflected back. I think that early in my career, I worked as a trainer for mentoring programs. And one of the things that we always really encourage them is, you know, make sure you have that conversation and that you're really listening to whatever they want to talk about. Don't just do the adult thing like, how was your day? Like, let them really engage, learn their friends, learn what they're doing, figuring out. And I mean, everyone wants to know that they're valued. It's, you know, whether it's any type of relationship. And so I think taking that time to really get to know the young person and then being okay that it's going to take some time to build their trust. And once they see that, I think most young people will really cling to that. Once they find that there's somebody who is really engaged, I ran a program with youth for 4 years in Baltimore, and one of the youth found me on Facebook maybe like a year or two ago. She's in her 20s now. She's, you know, an adult with her own children, but she's still very much, oh, Miss Billy, you know, because I valued her at the time. And so I think it's important to really connect and not just try to do your work, do your job, but figure out who the young person is and value what they bring to the table.
Thanks, Thanera. Yeah, that was great what you said about value and about engaging them. And that kind of reminded me of a lot of the sitcoms and the movies, how they show the teenage years. The teenager walks into the house, the mom or the dad says, hi, how was your day? And you get a grunt or you get maybe an okay, and then they grab a piece of fruit or something from the fridge and they're up in their room and the door slams. Or in a lot of my favorite movies, you hear all kinds of things coming from the room, stereos and such, but you don't actually engage with your child. And I think it's very, very difficult because, like you said, if they don't want to engage with you, how do you get them to engage? You know, how do you go about it? So that is the trick. But I think if you stay open, like you said, and just keep on, you know, keep that window always open for them. Let them know that you want to talk to them, that what they have to say is important to you, that you just don't want to hear, my day was okay. Like, what was your day? What was your class like? What did you learn today? Was everybody, you know, okay with you? Were you okay with them? Just trying to dig deeper into your questions, I think, when you're working with youth. And I know I agree with Youth and Era. I was fortunate enough to do some respite care for a while when my kids were in high school, and I had several of their friends staying with us off and on during the course of the school year, getting to drive them to their sporting events and having them at my house for dinner. And they all keep in touch with me. And it's like a blessing to me that all these young men that I kind of mentored through their high school years actually like me. It's like, wow. So, oh, great, we have Heather back. We can let Heather finish what she was telling us. This is great. Welcome back, Heather.
Thank you. Yeah, my entire computer crashed. That was so weird. I don't know where did you lose me, because I talked for a long time till I realized nobody was there.
We lost you at the very beginning. You were just talking about I think you mentioned about high school, and you were just literally at the beginning.
Okay. What I was saying is that sometimes, and I was thinking about the election and how, you know, like that's an activity that I feel like you should be engaged in, but because you can't vote until you're 18, there's these bureaucratic barriers that stand in your way. And so I think the disconnect becomes youth are like, oh, well, that doesn't matter to me because I'm not 18 yet and I can't participate in the activity. And I feel like as professionals who work with youth, we help them bridge the gap to help them realize that while they may not have a vote yet when they're 18, that what is happening is still going to affect their lives in the future. And so their voice actually matters, I would think, more than anybody who can put their, you know, check on a ballot, because it's their future that's going to be affected. So I feel like helping to bridge that gap and help them to see that the things that are happening in our community is really going to impact them. They're the ones that are going to be inheriting this planet. So I feel like helping them bridge the gap there. And then one thing that I was really fortunate to do is my high school had community service as one of our classes. And so I feel like and the biggest thing was they would ask us, what are we interested in? What do we want to do? What do we want to participate in? And I feel like we're all kind of born with some sense inside of us that we want to give back in some way, or a community that we're connected to in some way. And if we get them involved in things that they like to do or things that they're really into, maybe they're really into sports. And so a way that we can help them be engaged in the community is maybe volunteering to teach basketball camp at their local Y, or, you know, maybe they're really, when I was in school, I was really passionate about working with the LGBTQ community, as well as like things that had to do with social justice. And so the activities that I was engaged in were things that were in line with that. So really getting to know, I think when I popped in, you were talking about getting to know youth and asking them questions to really kind of engage them and meeting them where they're at. So whatever they're into, find out what that is and then help them bridge that gap. You were talking about the middleman. They may not know what organizations are out there that they can participate in. That's our job, is we can say, oh, you really like this? Great, let's connect you to, and kind of act as that middleman. And then I feel like then they are going to be engaged because it's something they enjoy. I mean, we're that way too, right? Just because we have the access to these, you know, or we know where to look, doesn't mean that there's any difference in how we get there. So those were kind of the 2 points that kind of bubbled up for me when you mentioned the question.
Thanks, Heather. That was awesome, insightful. I love the way you brought up about the election and getting students involved. I know in my high school as well, during the elections, we actually had a mock election, and we had debates. We had people like pretending to be the candidates, and what would they talk about if they were the candidate. And I thought that was awesome for students that want to get involved in that. But like you said, to each his own. And if you can find what that particular youth adolescent loves to do, sometimes that's your avenue into being able to talk to them and reach out to them. So I loved it that you brought that up. Well, I just wanted to mention, because we're getting close on our time here, that our presenter this afternoon is Seth Kelly, and he's going to be talking about engagement is the key to connection, and his talk is about morale. And there's an organization he works for in Fort Collins, Colorado. It's Base Camp, and it's for adolescents. It's a before and after school program, and for 25 years they've been running the program. I believe he's been with them for about 2 or 3 years now, and his kind of mission was to kind of reinvent it. They were having a lot of morale issues. So he's going to share with us, 2 years ago, Base Camp had a morale issue, and he's the new executive director. So we're going to kind of get to walk in his shoes with him for an hour as he goes over the process that he used to rebuild the morale and kind of shift the organization and have them thinking in a different way. So I hope that you can all join us for that. And we have about 5 minutes left. If any of you have anything to share where you might have had to have built morale in your organization, because that happens occasionally in this world that we live in, whether you're working with youth or adults, whatever job you're in, there's going to be crisis at times. There's going to be times when maybe your coworkers leave. Maybe someone that you thought was going to get promoted didn't. Maybe you didn't get promoted and you thought you were going to. Maybe one of your youth leaves the program, or maybe someone gets kicked out of the program and it's someone you were working with. These are all things that can cause morale to go down. And I just thought we could spend our last few minutes sharing any stories or anything you want to add about morale before we prep up for our afternoon session. Go ahead, Heather.
Yeah, I personally, well, the story that kind of came to me was something that I was a recipient of, and I know that it kind of reminded me of what Christian was talking about yesterday in his workshop about leadership, and that burnout. And I loved the activity that he came up with, was like holding 20 things and putting one in your pocket when you have a negative one and then a positive one, and kind of gauging it that way. And while I never participate in that activity, I think what I took away from it was that burnout is very, very common in this field, and it is such a stressful job. And you were saying it's a calling. I think that's perfect. But I think one way to combat that is to recognize our employees and to make them feel appreciated for the work that they do. And so it can be something really simple. And the last organization that I worked for, they did like an employee of the month, and which is really nice, and you got like a little card with a gift card, but that's not really what helped me or feel recognized. It was that they went out of their way to talk to the clients that I'd worked with, as well as my supervisors and staff, and each person said something nice about me. And so to open that card, and it was nice to get the Target gift card, but to read, because we don't always say to our fellow employees, or even those who work under us or above us, we don't always have the time to get positive feedback and say, you're really doing well, or I love when you did this with the kid, or I love. So being able to open that card and carrying, I left it in my car actually, so each day I was feeling defeated or down or whatever, I would read it and I'd be like, you know what, I can do this, I can walk into this door and I can. So I just feel like appreciation goes so far, just a small act of kindness. So I think that, as a recipient of it, really helped me to build my morale and made me feel like, okay, whenever I was down and out, that I could read the card and be reminded that I do have the skills and I do have the capacity and I can overcome whatever thing that I'm feeling for the day. So I like that.
Thank you, Heather. That was a really upbeat way to end our chat this morning, and it just reminds us, when they started the whole random acts of kindness, and that now, of course, it's a hashtag as everything else is. So I'm still learning the ways of Twitter, but I just love it that they actually have a random acts of kindness day, and it does remind you of that if you can keep kindness in the forefront of everything you do, even on your worst day when you think you're going to have a really bad day, because maybe you will have a bad day, but if you can keep that in your mind, do something kind for someone else, it can boost your own morale. That's kind of something people forget, is we rely on other people to boost our morale. And really, you're in charge of your morale. And how you boost it and how you keep it up is really up to you. And so that's kind of a good takeaway for us today. Anybody else have anything to say before we close our chat today?
I'll go off of that.
Yeah, great. Go ahead, Jess.
This is really similar, Heather, to what you were talking about. That a couple organizations I work with, they either have appreciation boxes or just whiteboards. So anytime those thoughts come up, you can put it in the box or you can put it on the whiteboard. So there's kind of an instant feedback route or more of a structured feedback route. So I think those have really been helpful to keep people connected and to share that same positive feedback.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Jess. I appreciate that. Well, everyone, thank you again for joining us today. Your feedback was awesome. Our conversation was so insightful, and we're going to have another great day with our conference. And please follow us at the SISKI group and our conference website. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, Instagram. just about everything in social media, you can find us. So we hope to see you later today for our workshop that will be led by Seth Kelly. Engagement is the key to connection. Have a fabulous day, everyone.